What's up, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Nurture Network podcast. And I'm so excited today because we are joined by our first guest, Charly Stakim, who I think we've been connected for about just over a year now, perhaps. And I've only met her once face to face, but I just had to get her on this podcast because honestly, when I met her, the story she was telling me, the mindset she has, it just embodies everything what this podcast is about, right? Which is adopting that growth mindset and, not fearing judgment to really pursue the things that you want to do. Now, Charly, I'll let her introduce herself in a second, but just to give you a quick overview, she has so many things going on in her life, and the way she balances it out is just so impressive, which is why, I wanted to bring her on. So she's is very consistent with her training. She's into her fitness. She has her own PT business trained by Charly, if I'm correct, and is even competing in a competition in March, which we'll find out a bit more about in a second. But Charly, why don't you introduce yourself to the people listening today?
Oh, such a nice intro. I'm so honoured to be here as your first guest as well. How exciting. But hi everyone, if you've not met me yet, well, you won't have met me yet. My name's Charly. I live in a small town by the coast in Scotland. I'm a personal trainer, I'm a model, and I'm a mum. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Thank you, Charly. And I think already, this conversation is going to be filled with value. And I'm looking forward to, you sharing your stories for other people to listen to. But let's start off from the beginning, right? Were you always into fitness, and how has it become a part of your identity today?
So I actually wasn't into fitness for a very long time. Actually, even saying not into fitness is an understatement. I was terrified of the gym, terrified of sports, training, and it's funny you say identity because I really do think that was the issue. I had this belief through school that I wasn't somebody who could exercise, wasn't somebody who could go to the gym. It didn't suit me. And it's funny to look back on that now because I'm in the gym every single day. I've got my first bodybuilding competition coming in March. And I'm such an avid gym goer and I'm a personal trainer. But back in the day, if you could tell me that when I was like 11, even up to the age like 17, I would have laughed and been like, there's absolutely no way but that's what I'm going to end up doing. But it's just funny how identity shapes you and moves you, and those beliefs like are the core of what your drive is and what you do in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, would you say you're one of those kids like at PE who would be like, yep, no, I'm going to hand in like some sort of form or something, not so I don't do the lesson or something like that?
All the time. And the thing is, I stuck in at school, like I did well with my exams and things, but the teachers were always pulling me up and being like, Charly, like, come on, you need to go to PE, you got to do it. I
Hmm.
would forge notes in my mum's handwriting. Like, I would just not attend. Even to the point, I think there was actually a few, like, your Christmas dance. Did you have that? Like at the end of
Hmm.
the year where you would go in PE and learn all your dancing. There's a few years they were like, Charly, if you don't come like to PE more, like you're not going to be able to go. So it was really bad. But I was so terrified of. I was just didn't feel that was something for me, and I was like, fitness just isn't my thing.
That's so ironic when you look at your situation now, right? It's literally a fundamental part of your life. So that just shows already, for people who perhaps don't see themselves doing it, that you can definitely get into that space. And it's sort of a similar story for me, to be honest. You know, I never really liked sports or any form of activity as a kid. And the gym, like especially, was not something that was on my radar. I started getting into like football probably from the age of 11 years old. But I was always that sort of skinny kid, and I'm not saying I'm huge now, but I was definitely not the sort of person you'd associate with going to the gym. And I think I first started going. because of perhaps the external expectations, or essentially to gain validation. It first started off as a validation thing. I wanted to be more attractive or appealing, and just like from, you know, getting noticed by more people. And after that, it became more of my own personal thing, right? I think it can always start off as something like wanting to please others. And then you sometimes realize in the process that actually this is a fundamental part of like my lifestyle now. Is that something you resonate with?
100%. And I feel that it's so funny you say that you started for a certain reason and it became something else, because I feel all of my clients would say the same thing. I would definitely say the same thing. When you step foot in the gym, it can be for a variety of different reasons, but it's usually when you've reached that threshold of your beliefs of yourself where enough's enough. And whether that has been for a lot of people, when they come to their first session with me, I'm like, what was that moment that made you come to the gym? And it's, oh, my mum at Christmas dinner said I put weight on, or like, or I looked at myself in the mirror before my night out and cried and was like, right, okay. And it's because it got to a certain point where they made that change. But later down the line, it becomes about their mindset. It becomes about, you know, being healthier. It becomes about having more energy, like sleeping better. So it can change, but originally, I feel it does come from, you know, passing that threshold. And maybe for you, it was that, you know, looking at yourself and being like, I want to be bigger, like I want to have more attention, and I've reached a point where that won't be acceptable anymore. So I now need to work for that.
Absolutely. And I think gaining that identity you were talking about earlier, right, can take time. Um, you always hear a lot of successful people that fitness or some form of activity, right, is a very common trait amongst them because it fits into their routine. It keeps them sane from a mental and physical perspective. But even though a lot of people know that, right, doing it or taking that leap to start doing something about it is very different. How, what would you say to like someone who perhaps wants to start going to the gym or doing some form of activity, right? But perhaps is, nervous or doesn't have the motivation to take that leap?
I think we've been talking a lot about beliefs and identity, but I really do think it's the core thing that is going to make you move. It's just even that realization. And I think it's just asking yourself, like, what is my identity of myself? Is it that I'm not a healthy person? Is it that I run late? Is it that I'm terrible at time management? Um, People will say to me, oh, I could never do something like that. And I'm like, how many times have you told yourself that? How many times have you told other people that? How many times are you telling yourself it in your head every time you see anything fitness related? And if you say I am over and over and over again to yourself, it's going to become a core belief. It's going to become, that part of you where, and it's this that phrase everyone says, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. So that's how you're going to respond and how you're going to react in the day to day. So I would sit with it, and I think it's about, rather than changing your identity, it's about expanding your identity. And it's important to dig into that because, our beliefs are that strongest force shaping our lives and what those actions are that we take. So I would sit and think about this new identity and forget who you were before. Forget that kid at school that fell over that time at whatever sport you tried and you were laughed at. Like forget like that chubby 5-year old whose grandparents used to always say they were like chubby and had nicknames for them. Forget that old person and who that was. Like who are you now? Like, and who is it you want? It's who you want to be is the answer. Like all those qualities you think in your head, and you need to start acting like that person and just cut all those old beliefs, which is easier said than done. But my advice for starting that would be just small actionable steps where you're doing things you didn't think were possible. So, for example, even if that's your step goal, say you hit 7,000 steps every day, and you're like, oh, I could never hit 10,000, right? Maybe it's more than that, maybe it's 15, right? So your stretch goal, and make sure it's something that you can actually achieve. And then when you achieve that, you're going to have more self-esteem, you're going to feel good. And it's about building that within yourself, that whole self-love, self-respect, and valuing what you think of yourself more than what others think of you, and putting that on a pedestal above that. Because when you start to build that core belief, that's when you're going to go to the gym and you're going to, do that squat, and you're going to go, wow, like, I just did that. I walked into a busy gym, I took that step, and you'll feel great for it. And it just becomes this cycle of, having that gratification, feeling that self belief, which leads to motivation, which then repeats. And before you know it, in a year's time, doing that every single day, you're going to be a completely different person, or the same person, but with an expanded identity.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said, right? Especially the point where you were like, you mentioned how you already need to like see yourself as that person, right? It's that whole manifestation piece, if you will. I think that's really, really powerful. Thinking about where you want to be, um, and like sometimes you don't even need to. You don't like necessarily need to like forget who you were before, but perhaps use it as motivation, right? To change that perception of what people think of you and of yourself, right? You want to become better, so you take the necessary steps to get there. And that's what it's all about, nurturing yourself to get to that point where you feel better about yourself. And that leads me nicely onto another point, because despite you obviously being super into your fitness, and that's what it was for you at the start, you're now running your own PT business where you're empowering a lot of women especially to become better versions of themselves, and really give them that motivation to take it to the next level. First of all, how did what made you want to become a PT and start the business, right, outside just being someone who loves going to the gym?
So before I was a PT, it's a big statement, but I didn't go to the gym. Like, it wasn't something I did. And it all came, so I have a daughter, she's 5 years old, and I had Sia quite young, so I was 18 when I fell pregnant, and it was unexpected, and it was obviously a very, like, she's amazing, she's my best friend in the whole world, like, however, at the time, it was a shock, and it kind of threw my plan or my expectations of what I was going to do out the window, and I had to start afresh. But what really changed for me hugely at that time when I fell pregnant was my thought process about what other people thought of me was no longer important. You kind of go into that, like, mother, like, what's the word? I'm losing it. Maternal instinct kicks in, and you're like, I only care about protecting this child now. And for me, it was all about the example I'm setting. Like, if I'm going to be a mum so young, like, I can't even step in a gym. Like, what kind of an example is that? I've got to, really put my big girl pants on and get these things done, because I want my daughter to be healthy. I don't want her to have these horrible beliefs. I want her to have a good example as a mum. So that was the real drive. And also, to then do that, I was like, okay, I'm going to be healthy now. Like, how do I do this? Go to the gym. And it was really hard for me to get there with a newborn. So I had this idea that, okay, how about I run these mum and baby fitness classes? It means that I'll be able to exercise. It will solve a financial problem because I'll be able to, earn money, and it'll be a good way to, have a community. And that's really what I was looking for. I was looking for, a flexible income opportunity, which would be my business. I was looking to stay healthy myself, and I wanted people around me. I wanted that community of uplifting people. However, that was the original driver. When I became a PT and went to work in a commercial gym, in an employed role first, because I was doubting myself and I was like, I need to learn more first. And my year at that commercial gym, I learned the problem is way bigger than just mothers. It's women in general. I had women coming to me for consultations, showing me pictures of celebrities, showing me pictures of other people's bodies, crying about how they can't step foot out the front door because so embarrassed of how they look. They can't wear certain clothing items. And there was a big self-love problem. Like there is. And I realize it's more than just about teaching people how to squat. This is about changing people's mindsets, giving people that change in identity so that they can fall madly in love with their bodies through fitness. And, community became a big element of that. And I'm so lucky now, I think it's been 4 years I've been a personal trainer now. Has it? Maybe 5 soon, which is exciting. But fast forward down the line, I have this incredible community of I'm so grateful for the clients I have. Honestly, the girls I work with are just amazing. They inspire me every day. They really do, with their stories and things that they've overcame. And I get to, have the pleasure of working with them and seeing them go through these obstacles in their own lives and their own journey. And they are so supportive of each other. It's that girl gang that, I've always wanted, which is just amazing. And I think more people need that because, they say you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're spending time with, people that like laugh when you say you're going to join a gym and tear you down and, order maybe bad food 7 nights a week, that's not the kind of people you need if you're going to go on that growth journey. You need people that are going to support you. You need to surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up. And that's easier said than done, because if all you know is your environment and all you have around you is people that say they want to go out on nights out all the time, and that's maybe just not your path, how do you cut everyone off and step into that? It's a really challenging thing to do. So I think I wanted to combine that community element with self-love, backed by science, so we're getting some good results. And yeah, here we are, trained by Charly.
Fantastic. You mentioned a couple of points there that I want to touch on, right? And one of them was that last thing you mentioned around, spending time with the right people. Um, Sometimes I find like even perhaps your like closest friends or like friends, that you spend a lot of time with are it's difficult to word it, but not counterproductive, but almost distance themselves when they see you trying to do something, or want to pursue something serious. And I've had to deal with that, right? I don't know what it is. It's really difficult when I'm like committing to something, or when I'm doing something good for myself. Like I've had friends, perhaps, not support the idea, which is fine, but then start, judging you for it, and that can be quite difficult to deal with. Was that something that perhaps you experienced with some people in your life, and if so, how did you deal with that? Because I think that's one of the biggest inhibitors of like people trying to start something that they're really passionate about.
I definitely feel I can relate to that. And I feel in every venture I've ever had, whether it be like anything I've ever started, there's always going to be that backlash that you get and that period of discomfort, I suppose, where you've not quite reached that next stage where you've found your people, and you've got those people around you. But I think such an important lesson, and it's so much easier said than done, like it really is. But knowing that, it sounds so Pinteresty, but like your vibe attracts your tribe. Like it really is true. Like if you're putting out positive vibes, like your people are going to see that, and that's all that matters. Other people's opinions really are none of your business. And that's sometimes tough because we like to make them our business, and they like to tell you what they think, but it's really just a reflection on them and their insecurities. And the real people you want around you are the people who will support you no matter what you do. And if anyone's tearing you down for something that you are feeling strongly about and you've got that heart tug to do, that's maybe just a reflection on their growth and how they feel, and an insecurity about getting left behind, or no, I could never do that. And you just need to breathe, accept that, know that this person is reflecting their own insecurities, and just breathe through that and stay in your lane. It's easier said than done, though. I know it can be rough, and for me, even now, I'll run into people from school and they're like, "You're a PT, you." Like, I don't think I saw you at PE once, but here we are. So yeah, I can 100% relate to that. But yeah, such is life.
I feel you. I feel you. And it's funny, like afterwards, when you start actually like committing to something, it's almost like, I don't know if you felt this before, but your biggest supporters are people that you don't even know. There's people like, I have like friends and stuff who know me, who I spend time with, but perhaps the stuff I do doesn't hit home with them. But I have, people reaching out to me on Instagram or TikTok saying, "Oh my God, I love what you do." And they start to like follow you and actually like message you and continuously support you, which is just crazy because they've never met you. And I guess that's the power of social media, right? But I think that really brings me to the point of, you know, your audience will find you, right? You'll find them. So you really should try and like start that thing that you really want to do, because there's always going to be someone, or there's going to be a cohort of people that enjoy what you're doing. And I mentioned that in my last episode, actually. So, I mean, you've come a long way from not loving PE and not liking, that whole gym thing to where you are now. It's insane. The journey's insane. And another thing now you also just touched on was, you mentioned that you have your daughter, Zia. Is she 5 years old now?
She's 5 now, yeah.
Five
Little
years old.
Z.
And now that is, I find it incredible how at 24 years old, right, you have your daughter, you have the online PT business going on, you're training for a competition in March. Now, you know, how how do you balance your time today? Because that must be quite a difficult thing to maintain, right?
I feel my Google Calendar is my best friend for sure. And yeah, how do I balance my time? It it's about being solution focused, I suppose. And I think I'm very self questioning. I don't suppose that's not a word, but I'll always question myself if I say I can't do something and find a way. And if I'm very honest with you, I don't know if I've ever spoke about this actually, so let's go for it. But I feel when I became pregnant so young, the main thing people told me was you've ruined your life, like you're not going to be able to do the things you plan to do. And for me, I suppose it just gave me a chip on my shoulder to be like, I'll do absolutely everything that I plan to do, maybe in a different time frame, but I will do absolutely everything that I want to do, because that's the example I need to set for my daughter. And if anything was, if Sia was to fall pregnant at 18, I would definitely not be turning around to her and saying that. So I had to be that example. And what has happened from that is I've maybe made riskier moves in business and in life, and I've had to do that. However, I now have a great relationship with Zia. We are best of friends. She understands, like, I've got this competition, like, she's such a cheerleader as well. And I can see her make these decisions as well. Like, she came up to me in soft play the other day and she was like, Mummy, those girls over there are quite bad vibe. So I'm just gonna hang out myself until some good vibe people come along. And I was like, I love that. Sit in discomfort until people come. But that is true. And I think kids do pick up on that. So Zia's definitely my main, motivation and inspiration in everything that I do. 100%. But yeah, I feel like I'm tangenting, but I feel that definitely gave me a chip on my shoulder to make sure I'd find solutions. And even with bodybuilding right now, every single week as I get closer to competition, like my cardio goes up and I need to train a little bit more and my meal prep gets a bit more complicated. But it's about getting up that little hour earlier. is there 7 things I can do with Zia? We can go walks, we can get the steps in. I've now got I won't pull it out. I've got a pink like treadmill that goes right under my kitchen table, so I can do steps while she's in bed. And it's just about finding these solutions to these problems and knowing that you can do anything you want, maybe just not in the way that you planned, but everything's figure outable.
I love that. I love that. And it sounds like she's following in your footsteps, right? In terms of that mindset she's adopting and giving all that good energy, to be honest. But that's really interesting because, you know, I've seen it like when I was at school. There's always going to be an element of negative judgment towards someone who falls pregnant like quite early on, or you write them off, right? You said it yourselves, and I think it's something that perhaps a lot of us need to like change our perception towards, because you look at yourself now and you know you've gone through that situation and been able to actually go and do the things that you've been able to do. And I just think that's amazing in terms of the mindset you're adopting. And I think you even told me a story, which I might be going a bit off track here, but I thought it's still relevant. But when we met, you told me a story that I thought was just amazing, right? Can you just share the story about COVID and the whole painting thing? Because if because I think that's quite interesting, and I'll tell the viewers why it's like relevant afterwards. But why don't you just share that story?
So, okay, so COVID was a really interesting point in my life. So I had actually like a few months, no, it was literally in the March, I had broke up with Zia's father. Um, so I had to move back home, which is like an hour and 20 minutes away. Moved back home, away from my work, no car, no nothing, like back in my mum's house with my toddler. There's not enough rooms for us. It was a bit chaotic. And then the whole world lockdown happened. So I was put in a flat with Zia, and again, no clients, all overnight, nothing. It was very hard to, live. Like how was I going to work and do this with Zia? So I was thinking of ideas, and me and Zia were actually painting one day, just like for fun. She was doing her little drawings, and I just typed into Google things to paint, and this naked woman came up. So I painted the painting and put it on my Instagram story. And one of the girls had been like, "Oh, like I really like this. Like, can I buy it from you? Like, can you paint me one?" And I was like, "Sure." And I was like, "I wonder if I could just paint and make money that way." So I bought. I am not a painter. I'm a personal trainer. Like I'm not a trained artist at all. However, I bought lots of different paints and I bought lots of different like canvases, knowing nothing about like how to finish them or how to professionally set them up. And I just started painting nudes essentially and selling them. And I started to really like challenge myself with it. It was fun. I was like, I feel this is worth, I don't know, like this one's worth 500 quid. Like, let's just see. And it would go. And I'd be like, oh, someone just bought my painting. Like, this is crazy. I remember the excitement just alone in my little bare flat. Like, how is this happening? And it was just that belief. I was just painting and I would post it. I actually received a message from a girl who is incredibly talented artist, by the way. I'll find her name and we can tag it. But incredibly talented girl, painted all her life, who messaged me and she was like, "Charly, I literally have been painting my whole life and I've never ever had the confidence to post my stuff. So I love that you're posting all your paintings." And I was like, "You're a real painter. Like you definitely should be posting your paintings." Um, like she's so much more talented. So she 100% should have been doing that, and that's just that fear. So I think if you do anything with belief, it's possible. But painting got me through COVID. It was a lot of fun. It was very therapeutic. I'll thank you to everyone who let me paint them naked. It was wonderful. But people in other countries were buying them. It was wild. It was what a fun time. But yeah, that was another way of empowering women to fall in love with their bodies, just not through fitness, through paint.
Mm. And the reason why I wanted to share that was because it just shows like a mindset of just trying something. And, even though you didn't know you were going to get paid for like painting after like never painting really professionally, you've managed to make something out of it, and you found almost, a way of making money during these difficult times through just trying something new, right? You didn't know. And yeah, I think that's a lot of people like think that they have to be the finished product, right? Before, or, have to be credible, like very, very credible to like start something, I have to be a painter in order to sell paintings. And you've just you've just shown that you don't, right?
You
You
don't.
can exactly. And I think more people need to try and do that, because even myself, right, a similar thing before even starting this podcast, I was questioning myself. I was like, but I don't have a studio, how I don't have the best fancy mic, I don't know like how the technicalities work. I wanted to be like top dog from the get-go. I wanted to be like Stephen Bartlett or Jay Shetty, who have like professional studios and everything with a team. But I had to do some self-reflection and say, actually, you know what, you just need to start, right? You need to start somewhere. And I've got my mini studio set up. I think you've seen it now, and it's a work in progress, and it's something I enjoy doing. And I think that's what more people need to try and do, because you kill your ideas straight away, or you don't start things because you're afraid. When you take a leap of faith, sometimes good things happen, um, like you've seen with the painting thing, right? I think that's honestly such a cool story. It really is. Um, Now, another thing, I would love to tap into like briefly was, your training. I think this is your first like professional sort of competition. It'd be just good to understand, what was the motivation behind that, and how has it been this last year training for it? What was the mindset that you had to adopt for it? What did you need to do to get to where you are now?
Well, it's been a ride. It's been good, but I feel like it's been a lot of growth, and I don't mean that just like in a physical sense, but I mean just from a mindset point of view. I'd always kind of in the back of my head thought about bodybuilding, and like everyone else, like starting anything, I worried what people would think of me. I had beliefs about what I could do and what I couldn't do. I had a lot of my environment, even at that point, I felt a lot of the people around me were growth mindset and they were, positive people. But if I look at myself, a year and a half ago, um, a lot of my friendships, my relationship, like the way my family would speak about women that were a bit more muscular, wasn't supporting what I wanted. And I just took that all in. So, yeah, now, fast forward, we're about to compete. And it's been about the challenge, it's been about getting uncomfortable. And that was going into a growth phase at first, so putting on a lot of weight, which I wasn't used to. Um, if I'm honest, like I've always kind of been in a deficit or maintenance when it comes to calories. I've always tried to, keep myself looking in shape because I'm a personal trainer, and it's all been, oh, people won't buy from me if I'm fat. Like, it's been that mindset really. So putting myself in that position where I was putting weight on purpose and maybe not fitting into my jeans was hard. But again, I found the right people around me that could support me, guide me, people who had done it before, and took the advice of people who were in positions that I wanted to be in. And just blocked out everything else. And there was definitely difficult conversations around that time. A lot of my initial conversations when I told people I was doing this was, oh, I remember one of my friends, I won't name, and that they're very supportive now, but at the time when I told them was like, oh, but you're so pretty, like you shouldn't do bodybuilding. And I was like, oh, like it's instant. You can't. I know my family, like my mum will like gladly say that she didn't support it at first, but it's about putting myself in that uncomfortable position to do it, and I've absolutely loved it. It's been great, and it's been such a learning experience for me. And I knew it would make me a better coach because my training would have to improve. I'd have to learn more about nutrition than just lifestyle nutrition. So I'm excited. I'm still very, very scared, but we'll do it. There's a theme here. We're just getting out of the comfort zone.
But look at that. I think you've mastered that. I think in terms of getting out your comfort zone and doing things. But they say, I think it's actually the feeling of nerves and excitement are actually the same scientifically. Apparently, I didn't know if you knew that, but yeah, I think you can take that into your competition, because if you get nervous, just know that it's the same as excitement. So it's quite funny. Like I have a friend who told me this, and when he got nervous, he would actually just act excited and almost fake it to really kind of change that feeling of nerves in his head. But apparently they're the same thing. But that's really awesome that you're doing this. I think continuously finding ways to push yourself and just reach that next level. You've started the business. Well, firstly, you started going to the gym after not thinking that it was something that you were going to do. Then you started a business, and now you're competing in an amateur competition. It's leveling up each time, and I think a lot of people can learn from that, and respective in their own lives, whatever it may be. One day I'd like to replicate this, with a podcast. One day I'd like to get a studio, or like do a live podcast, or get an in-person podcast, something, just getting better every time, right? If that makes sense. But
And it will.
I
You'll
guess,
have your studio. I can't wait to be invited back in a studio
yeah,
in year's
exactly.
time. It's gonna be great.
I'll have to, for the people listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like you'll be able to see my setup on my YouTube channel as well. But I'll share it. I'll share what my studio looks like on my Instagram. So just so people know, what the reality is right now. But sometimes, it's good for them to see what's behind the scenes. Um, but before like I wrap up this podcast, is there anything you would say to the people listening today, that if they're afraid of starting to do something, what would you say to like motivate them to take that leap and start?
This is a great question. I would say have a look at where you're at and ask yourself what it would take to make that change. Because I don't know about you, Neelish, but like I know there's definitely been moments in my life where things passed my personal threshold of what was acceptable, whether it be in health, relationships, career. Like you'll know if you've ever left a job or you've ever done that, you'll have reached that moment, and what it took to do that, and how you felt after you made that change. And just really tap into those feelings first and feel how good that felt. And then ask yourself, how far are you going to let this go? Like, is it a business you want to start? How are you going to let this go till you're really old? Is it going to be when you're 60 and you're like, like I should have done that? Is it like your health? Is it like quitting smoking? Like, is it going to be till you have a serious health issue? Like, what is it going to be that's going to make you make that change? And don't let it get to that. And it starts with just, you know, having that self love, that self respect for yourself to go, I care about what I think of myself rather than what my mum thinks my friends think. And I know I'll respect myself for doing this. And then you've just got to do it. And it sounds such bad advice to say just do it. But it really is just putting one foot in front of the other and doing the thing. Get it scheduled in the diary, do it now. Is there one action step you can take right now while you're listening to this podcast that is scary and is going to move you forward? And if you're driving, listening to this, or you're doing something else, like, there's something you can do. Like, can you phone a friend, ask them to hold you accountable? Can you book in the diary that appointment with, that business advisor? Can you, whatever it is, can you sign up to that gym tonight? Can you do it right now? If you can, go. We're behind you. I want to know. Definitely message us on Instagram. Let us know if you took that scary step, because I'll be rooting for you for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. And, just to top it off, I think if you just do it, it's not going to be perfect the first time, right? But the more you do it and the more you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, something's going to happen. Like, you just need to keep going. So I absolutely love that answer, Charly. And honestly, I thank you so much for agreeing to come on as a guest, my first guest. I'm so happy that you did. It's been amazing to have you on, and I think you will help a lot of people who are going to listen to this.
Thank you so much for having me on. And honestly, Neelish, I think it's just amazing that you're doing this. And I know you've said a lot of nice things about me, but I for sure am so inspired by you and all that you're sharing online, your whole message. I'm so behind it, and I know that your community will be too. So this is great.
I appreciate that very much, Charly. It means a lot, and hopefully we're going to keep on, growing this podcast and getting more viewers to really keep nurturing themselves and creating that community of people who want to, adopt the growth mindset and move forward. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you've got to this point, if you did listen to it and you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to my Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whichever way you're listening to it. It would mean a lot and will help the podcast and myself get better guests and keep moving this forward. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.